Okay. Mic check 1 2 1 2. I am the Y2K collector and I am back. I wanted to take some time this afternoon just to talk for a minute. Talk about what it means to be a collector today. Talk about what I'm seeing whenever I go out and I try to find some games, and then also what it means to collect for retro games today in particular. Just, you know, the how easy it is to find games, cost, price, all that type of stuff. So stick around if you got a little time. Would definitely love to talk about it. Also, want to share some stuff that I was able to find out in the wild. I was actually shocked at some of the games that I've been able to find in stores even as common as GameStop. I mean, I'm running into N64 games, I'm running into Super Nintendo games, I mean, I'm running into NES games, original Game Boy games, and all of this is showing up at a GameStop near you because GameStop has expanded their purchase programs in terms of the types of games that they're willing to purchase from customers. And I think they're kind of, they're late. I feel like they're a little late to the game in terms of how upfront they are about it and how much they're really pushing it in their stores. I feel like they kind of missed the retro wave. And if GameStop would have been doing some of what they're doing now, perhaps during the pandemic, or even beforehand, they may have been able to capitalize on that wave. But you had companies like DK Oldies and, other companies, mom and pop places that were just killing it during the pandemic when it comes to, retro games and retro game collecting. I mean, during the pandemic, you had YouTube channels and Instagram pages that blew up. You had resellers who became famous. I mean, known worldwide for their collecting, for their flipping, for their reselling. So I think there was definitely a ton of hype around video game collecting, and I think even I got swept up in some of that, right? And it's easy because you want to kind of get everything you see. But somewhere in early 2022, I realized that one, I did not want to have a video game collection with more than 1,000 games in it. I didn't even think I wanted to have a collection with more than 500 games in it. But I realized the only way for me to really make the most of this collecting thing is to just start curating my collection and not buying everything that I either want or see. And so that means really just narrowing down the genres that I'm into. And I think that's kind of easy for me because I've always had a particular type of taste and a particular type of style. So for me, I typically gravitated towards more of your action games, your action platformers, your hack and slash, 2D side scrollers, not too much into the turn-based RPGs. I'm not a huge sports game guy unless I'm in a group and we're all playing the game together, but I'm not just going to go out and buy a bunch of sports games and play random people online. I am a fan of fighting games, but the older fighting games. These newer fighting games are not games that I'm into. I don't play Street Fighter 4 or 5 or anything like that. So it's kind of easy for me to kind of narrow what I'm into, and I'm able to just buy the games that I want for each of the consoles that I own. So I think the current state of just, collecting and, where we're at with it, I think, it's definitely changed. I think the community is still there. I just think that a lot of speculators are probably gone. They're probably done, and they're probably selling off whatever collections they amassed over the last couple years. So if you are sorry about that, but if you are a diehard collector, now's the time to go find stuff because there's stuff everywhere. And so that kind of leads me into the next part, right? About, what we're seeing out there in the field. So, when I go to stores, when I go to GameStop, when I go to my, thrift store, retro store, I'm noticing that there's just more product, like games that I know would have been snapped up, maybe, a year or so ago, I'm noticing that they're sitting on the shelves, right? And it's not concerning to me. In fact, it's actually great, because what I'm noticing is that a lot of the games that were priced really high but were still very common are games that you can now see. So I'm sure that, Smash, like a game like Smash Bros, during the hype of retro collecting, Smash Bros, I don't even know how high it was going for, but now you can walk into a GameStop and probably pick up a copy of Smash Bros for $25-30. Same thing with games like Donkey Kong 64, any of those common like Nintendo games. And I see this more with Nintendo than anything else, because I collect heavily for like Sega Genesis and PlayStation, and for some reason it just seems like Sega Genesis collectors, or Sega collectors in general, know what the good games are. They always do. And so when good Sega Genesis games are out there in the wild, they get snapped up. But when it comes to like games that are popular and are sought after but aren't rare, like I said, like a Zelda Ocarina of Time, or like a Super Mario 64, or some of your Nintendo 64 games, or even some of your Super Nintendo games, those games I'm seeing more common. I'm also seeing Super Nintendo games in GameStop. Now granted, 2 of the 3 times I saw a Super Nintendo game in GameStop, they were fake. So if it's anything that's really rare, really sought after, and if it's in GameStop, I'd approach with caution, just because they don't really have a good way of testing games and really verifying if they're real or not. And I've had to return 2 games. I've had videos on my channel about the fake games that GameStop has sold me, but I was pleasantly surprised during my last GameStop run, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what I picked up there. But overall, I feel like now, if you're out there looking for retro games, I feel like it should be easier. They should be easier for you to find than they were before, just because I think the hype has died down. And I think that if you have a collection that's built up of thousands and thousands of common games, I think it's going to be really hard if you decide to switch hobbies, or if you decide, okay, I just don't want to do this anymore, and you try to sell out. I think it's going to be really hard for you to either A, sell those games to begin with, or B, you're going to have to take a massive hit on what you paid for those games, especially if you bought them within the last 2 years. So I think overall, if you're a person who really liked games and you collected games to keep them, and you've been curating your collection, and you've only been buying the things that you like, and you've only been buying the games that you're going to play, then I think those collectors are fine. I think if you bought a bunch of games thinking that they were going to go up in value and you were going to be able to sell them and trade them in, I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed, because I think they're going to try and pretty much streamline their collection, and it's not going to be as easy. I think if you were going to, let's say, get rid of your shovelware, or if you were going to try and get rid of, just more of your common stuff, that's something you would have needed to do probably last year, going into the first half of this year. If you haven't sold your common stuff yet, odds are you're not going to be able to, I would say, pretty much from now going forward. A lot of reasons around that too, that just don't even that aren't even video game related. For one, a lot of the COVID programs that gave people extra cash and extra money, those are gone. A lot of the bills and payments, like student loans, rent, mortgages, things like that, a lot of those things that were put on hold, those are gone. So not only are people facing new charges, in terms of bills that they have to pay, but also everything is going up. So that loose cash for games just isn't there anymore. And retro game collectors, like retro game store owners, they're only going to be looking for the stuff that, like I said, is rare and uncommon. And I know because I actively sell. I sell a good amount of games almost every week, and I'm noticing that whereas before game stores would take everything, now they're rejecting. Like I'm seeing where some games that go for like $60 on eBay are being rejected by game stores. So I say all that to say that if you are trying to streamline your collection, if you are trying to curate your collection, and you see that there are games in your collection that maybe aren't your favorite games or games that you think you may want to get rid of, try doing it now. Try doing it before the end of the year, before everyone completely runs out of money, because then it'll be really hard to do that. So I mean, that's what I think about the current state of retro game collecting now. For me, it doesn't matter. I thoroughly like my collection. As far as I'm concerned, I'm having a hard time selling stuff now because I want to streamline more, and I want to reduce the number of games in my collection. Just every time I see the number of games, which is roughly around 800. I have roughly around 800 games in my collection. I really want to get that number down. But sometimes there's some games that when I have them, it's just like, this is nostalgia for me. So a lot of the games that I have are either nostalgia, games that I wanted to play, games that I want to have, or just right up my alley. All right, so gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. So what can you expect, I guess, going into the end of the year, going into 2024? Like I said, I think now is a good time to start taking advantage of, some of the deals and promotions that are going to come with the holiday sales. There are some really cool and interesting games being released for the Switch and for the PS4. So my attention has kind of been on that more so than the retro stuff, because I feel like I've satisfied my retro itch for the most part. I've gotten all the systems that I've ever been interested in or wanted. If there's any other system I may get, any other two systems, it may just be the Neo Geo CD, perhaps, and the TurboGrafx 16. I think those are the only other two pieces of hardware that I actually want to have. But outside of that, I think I've scratched the retro itch. So for me, it's been more so about the newer games, which I am going to do a video showing some of the newer Switch and PS4 games that I picked up. But I am going to pause for a minute and just talk about some recent pickups that I've been able to get. And none of the heavy hitter stuff like I usually post on my channel, but I was genuinely surprised and happy to find these pickups, and I'm going to go through them with you now. So one of the first things that I wanted to show you guys was I was actually in my local thrift store where they sell like baby clothes and all that type of stuff, and I was going through just like an aisle with like random household stuff, and I happened to run into like a very good condition Super Nintendo controller. So here I am at the store, and I run into this SNES controller, and it was dirty in the store. I was like, I wonder if this thing works. But I looked at the cord rather. None of the wires seemed frayed. Everything looked like it was in good working order. So I said, I'm going to take a chance on this. Took it home, wiped it down, cleaned it up. I could probably clean it up a little bit more. I actually just used a Lysol wipe. I need to get my brush out, but it cleaned up nice. Tested it on the SNES you see right back there. Tested it on that guy, and yeah, this actually works. $5.99. I was totally stoked to get that. So I think it actually was less, but $5 for Super Nintendo controller, an OEM controller in good condition, no scratches, just a little dirt. I'll take that. So I was really stoked to get that. $5, can't beat it at the local thrift store. All right, another pickup. So I talked about GameStop. GameStop is selling retro stuff again. So you want GameCube games? Go to GameStop. You want N64 games? Go to GameStop. Disclaimer, I don't think GameStop is going to have anything other than Nintendo games when it comes to retro games. I feel like if you go into GameStop looking to find a copy of Altered Beast, you're going to be sad, because I don't think people trade that in at GameStop, but you definitely find a bunch of Nintendo games. And one game that I got that was a blast from the past, reminded me of my cousins back when I was 10, is this guy right here. So Donkey Kong 64. I was stoked when I walked into I almost said Stop and Shop. I was stoked when I walked into GameStop and saw that they had a copy of Donkey Kong 64. Again, it was a little dirty, had to take a Lysol wipe. Like this game really needed a Lysol wipe. Like if I would have showed you the before, or maybe I'll show you a photo of the before, but this definitely needed a cleanup, but it works. It's authentic, which is huge because GameStop sells so many fake games, but this was an authentic game. Was glad to get this copy of Donkey Kong 64. And then last but not least, because I don't have many pickups this week, because it's dried up out there, I was able to get from GameStop a copy of Super Smash Brothers. Now, I was really happy when I saw this because I recently picked up a copy of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, just because I'm gonna have them all for every system, right? So I have Smash Bros on the N64, I have Smash Bros Melee on the GameCube, I have Smash Bros Brawl on the Wii, and then I think I sold my copy for the Wii U, might get it back, but I definitely have Smash Bros Ultimate. But I was stoked when I saw this, came home, played it immediately just to get those nostalgia feels, and this is gonna sit parked in my purple N64 until I'm ready to play it again, or until some friends come over. But again, a clean copy, and guess how much it cost? $12. Can't beat that. $12 for Super Smash Bros on N64, and it is authentic. I had to crack both of these guys open, unscrew them, and make sure that the insides were good. But that does it. That does it for the pickups this week, because like I said, it's getting kind of dry. Usually gets a little dry around this time of year for the retro stuff. Yard sales and all that stuff are going away. But whenever I do see a good deal or a good steal, I'm gonna go ahead and grab it, just because it makes sense. Well, that does it for this video. I figured I'd just kind of share some thoughts on retro collecting, see what you think. What are you all seeing out there when you go out game hunting, you go game searching? Let me know. Let me know what you're seeing. Let me know what you're finding. Let me know if you're noticing any trends, any pricing trends or collecting trends. I'd be interested to know. Well, thanks for stopping by. I am the Y2K Collector. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take it easy.